Culture is a system of values and norms. Values are the ideas about what a group believes to be good, right, and desirable, and norms are the social rules and guidelines that prescribe appropriate behaviour in particular situations. Culture evolves over time in response to a number of factors, including language, social structure, religion, education, and political and economic philosophy. We know these as elements or determinants of culture. Language is a defining characteristic of culture, both spoken and unspoken. New Zealand and Australia are dominantly English-speaking countries, with 72% of Australians speaking English and 95% of New Zealanders. What's also interesting is that 4% of New Zealanders speak their native Maori language. Low and high context language is another factor to consider. Low context is where the spoken words explicitly convey the speaker's message, and high context is where body language or the context itself and not the direct message is of more importance. As you can see from the below graphic, both New Zealand and Australia are considered low context. Religion is a dominant factor of a society or culture. Comparing the religions of Australia and New Zealand, we can see that they have similar religious structures of both which are dominated by Christianity, but also important to note that both have a high number of people with no religion. The Australian and New Zealand education systems are broadly structured the same: early childhood, primary and secondary, and higher and vocational education. And both countries teach the same curriculum subjects. So why is this important? Education, along with families, plays a role in teaching through its curriculum a society's values and norms. As you can see, Australia has a class-based social structure. It has been viewed that New Zealand doesn't have a social structure with hierarchies like some other countries. However, some other views are that New Zealand is not a flat social structure as many New Zealanders believe, but a small social structure. This being the case, it is difficult to determine social structure in New Zealand, but you'll soon see from Hofstede's study that there are some structures in place regarding business which is important to take note of. Both Australia and New Zealand have individualism political philosophies where an individual should have the freedom in their economic and political pursuits. We also both have a constitutional monarchy based on the Westminster system, and our politicians are elected through a democratic process. Both Australia and New Zealand have mixed economies. This is where areas of the economy are left to the free market through supply and demand, whilst other areas are significantly state-owned or have regulatory government oversight. Hofstede's Cultural Dimensions is the most famous study of culture in the workplace. It consists of 6 dimensions, and we will discuss and compare Australia and New Zealand with each of these. New Zealand and Australia both score low on power distance. This means that both countries have an established hierarchy within business for convenience, where superiors are accessible and managers rely on individual employees and teams for their input. This allows communication to flow informally, direct, and with a participative approach. New Zealand and Australia both score high on individualism versus collectivism. This demonstrates both countries in terms of business have employees that are expected to be self-reliant and display initiative. And in relation to hiring, decisions are based on merit or evidence of what a person has done or can do. New Zealand and Australia are both considered masculine societies. This is where there is an attitude for people to strive for the best they can be and the winner takes all. Conflicts are also resolved at the individual level, and the goal is to win. Uncertainty avoidance has to do with the way a society deals with the fact that the future can never be known. It also involves the extent to which the members of a culture feel threatened by ambiguous or unknown situations and have created beliefs and institutions that try to avoid these. New Zealand and Australia both have intermediate scores. These scores do not show a preference. New Zealand and Australia both score low on long-term orientation versus short-term. This shows both countries are long-term countries. People in such societies have a strong concern with establishing the absolute truth. They exhibit great respect for tradition, a relatively small propensity to save for the future, and a focus on achieving quick results. New Zealand and Australia both score high on indulgence versus restraint. Indulgence generally exhibits a willingness to realise your impulses and desires with regard to enjoying life and having fun. In addition, it places a high degree of importance on leisure time. You act how you please and you spend money as you wish. It is also important to note there are some criticisms with Hofstede's model. So let's look at Ronan and Schenker's clustering countries model, which, as you can see, Australia and New Zealand have been grouped once again together in the Anglo group. This study focused on countries that shared many similar cultures and are deemed to be psychically close. As you can see, Australia and New Zealand have a lot of similarities relating to culture, but also some differences that need to be considered. Whilst we may be very convergent, it is also important to remember that over time this could change, and a review of how we work with New Zealand would also need to be done to continue to add value to our dealings.